Mr. Edwin, I think this trend has been existing for some time, and it is sad that how East Africa is not united. It shows there is a gap in matters of democracy, in matters of diplomacy, in matters of relationship as East Africa community. We see it here another time in Tanzania, where our activists from Kenya were
Right.
being arrested and put in a communicado, whereby they cannot reach, no one can reach them, no one knows where about. And when the authority is urged to represent or to state where they are about, you find it becomes now a situation whereby people are raising questions. We have seen it still in Uganda, whereby this has happened again, and this is these two countries, they don't want the democracy to have its way, because when a country is posing dictatorship, where policies are not implemented, where the will of the people is being suppressed, you find that that country, when you visit, you trend on fear, because you don't know what might happen the next time. So what I'm urging the East Africa community, which underlies how someone should be arrested. And if you are arrested, you should not be put in a communicando, whereby you cannot reach your people. So that is against the law of humanity. It is against the international law, and this should face consequence from the international law, whereby a country is holding the foreigners in communicando.
Interested. Well, I would still want to stay with you, but maybe for about 30 seconds, help Africans understand. As it stands, the security operatives in Kenya have said, we've not gotten any intel. Nairobi Senator Samson Cherage also condemned the abduction because he calls it an abduction and says it's unacceptable. Looking at the fact that legislators are talking tough in Kenya about these activists that are missing in Uganda, does it mean that the body language of the presidency is clearly having a relationship, bilateral relationship between Kenya and Uganda, to seeing how these two activists can return back home if truly they were taken by security operatives in Uganda?
Happen because the three countries are collaborating in together. Whereby you find Kenya, they have a clean democracy where a person, we can go to street to demonstrate. I can raise my voice when I see mismanagement in the government.
Right.
When I see anything that is violating the constitution, I can raise my voice. But in Tanzania and Uganda, when you raise your voice, the moment you have spoken, freedom ceases. So it means when you raise a voice concerning the government, the next course of an action is that DCI or the authority will arrest you, and not only arrest, you'll be taken in communicando by these people. So you find that the government in Kenya is, they are in collaboration with Uganda. You find the other day, Bisinje was arrested here in Kenya. Not only arrested, he was abducted here in Kenya. And that is the relationship that is violating the law of humanity. And we should stand the terror and condemn anything that is violating human rights and that is violating a right for any individual.
All right, then. Thank you so very much, Mr. Martins, for your submission there. I want to take this conversation to Uganda, where Barrister Edward is already standing by. Barrister, I want to find out from you the path of cross-border activism. Is this a crime in your country? Let me start from that angle.
Thank you, David, and my colleagues at the studio, and those online. In fact, I want to start by telling you, David, that Uganda is not a believer of law. Uganda is actually a believer of leadership, or specific leadership of the current regime. Uganda suspended a constitution long years ago, so that alone can tell you In Uganda, there is nothing like a freedom of speech, no free movements. So you get that even the borders we are talking. Recently, I saw in papers, I saw somewhere that Kenya is actually now, Kenya and Uganda have opened the borders for free movements, no more asking documentations. But I crossed the border just a few days ago, and I confirmed there was nothing of the kind. So there's a lot of propaganda when it comes like issues of governance, issues of actually even the bilateral agreements. So what is happening currently? The current president in Uganda is, as always, in panic when it comes the time of elections. So it's not something which is new to us, where people are being actually manhandled, people have been mistreated. You get army has been poured on the streets, and this is a country which is supposed to be called a country of law, and a country which does not actually should not be actually be ruled by the military. But unfortunately, Uganda, as we talk, is managed by a military person, and we are under military rule as we talk.
Well, quite unfortunate, really. And maybe before I go to Liberia, let me come to the studio here. Doctor, I want to first talk about the fact that you are big on some of these political issues, which again is the reason why your present book, Abuse of Power, How Democracy Has Turned into Tyranny for the Few, is a major book that I think Africans should consistently go get. Now, on the part of power, let's talk on abduction of activists from even in the state and cross-border activism. Do you think as it stands, because from reports, the people who held these guys are clearly, some were on uniform in Uganda. But again, isn't there the path of cross-border activism that could peacefully be done? And if there is a law against cross-border activism, shouldn't there just be a normal arrest of this person rather than an abduction and their phones are switched off? They are not you can't communicate with them.
Well, I want to start by saying that African countries are collaborating negatively. What is happening between Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya, because Nigeria is involved too.
Right.
Because Nnamdi Kanu was abducted from Kenya. So what is happening is a negative collaboration, and the aim being to hinder free speech. What we should be collaborating on is economic development. Understand?
Right.
If that is happening, then it should be more understandable. But trying to shut somebody off is infringing on the person's fundamental human rights. Understand? Okay. There's freedom of association and freedom of movement in most constitutions of the world.
Right.
So there's nothing wrong from one person, whether an activist or whatever, going to another country to show solidarity or support.
Okay.
Understand?
Okay.
Provided that it's not going there to destroy properties or affect public peace. So what is happening there is intimidation, harassment.
Well, still staying with you before you continue. The barrister in Uganda did say that the constitution had been neglected long ago from this administration. I mean, the administration of President Kakuta Museveni. But on the part of having to show solidarity, should this be happening within an election circle? Because this is an election circle in a couple of months from now.
No, it happens when people in power have not delivered on their campaign promises.
Even after being there for years?
Even being there for 100 years, it doesn't matter. Understand? So it is not how long, but how well. So an incumbent becomes jittering and turns to A dictator, when he's sure that he's not going to get the vote of his people freely.
Okay.
Understand? So he will now resort to intimidation and harassment, abduction, illegal imprisonment, and so on and so forth.
Now, you did say sometime last week that post-COVID, there's not been an incumbent that returned back to office in the presidency all across the world. And of course, this is an incumbent thinking of wanting to go back into power. Are we seeing an incumbent who is practically scared of opposition, who again, according to some quarters, is gaining so much ground, even in cities and not in the urban areas?
The only way for Museveni to win is if the nation is manipulated. If the nation is not free and fair. Because
that's what's playing out. That's what's going to play out.
Sure, and once you know that you are going to lose power, you will do everything that to protect it, and that means manipulating the electoral process. And that's exactly what is happening all across Africa. Mind you, on October 1st, the Nigerian president saying, "Don't talk bad about Nigeria." You should understand what that means. I shouldn't talk bad about Nigeria, and you know our own election is just about 2 years away.
Yes.
So when they tell you don't talk about Nigeria, a message has been sent, and what it means, don't criticize my government.
Oh, that's what your interpretation of that statement means.
That's what it means.
Okay then. Let's take this conversation to Liberia, yes, where Mr. Hansen is standing by. Well, as a media person, freedom of speech is practically in every charter of every country. But then again, what we see recently is that freedom after speech isn't guaranteed. Looking at the fact that Bobby Wine is a young person in Uganda wanting to change the narrative of presidency, and of course gunning for the presidency for the second time running, do you think, as it stands, the president of the country, I'm talking about President Yoweri Museveni, clearly is acting, if truly, as alleged, that the security operatives in Uganda are the ones who abducted these two activists? Do you think he's acting in fear? Mr. Hansen.
Thank you so much, David. And I think it is important for us to recognize that this is politics. And there are different things that happens in terms of oppositions to fear that ravers. So it could be another form that the president, Museveni, is trying to intimidate Bobby Wine. Because the thing is, I may not be actually in Uganda, but from the narrative of the news, how it shifts, he's had a lot of fame, and a lot of young people tend to look up to him as elections approaches. So it's a way of the government intimidating. I think that's violate international human rights and freedom of speech, and even the constitution of movement. I think this shouldn't be happening, because when it comes to election, people should speak their mind, and that is the truth to power. Like our constitutions in the US, they say power to the people. So let the people give you power, the people can take the power back from you. So regardless of your opposition's opinions, no need for intimidations. If you think you have the voice of the people, what you have done is good. Right. Let everyone go to the pool peaceful and let whoever they want to let.
All right then. Thank you so very much for that submission there. But I wanted to ask you again, and of course, I'm going to stay with you before I go back to Uganda. Ivory Coast as well. The government of Ivory Coast has banned protests ahead of the elections. That is in a few days from now, particularly because of the fact that people are protesting because some key figures, opposition figures, have been taken out of the election. And of course, this exclusion of several key figures, particularly going into the October 25th election by the Constitutional Council, has caused so much uproar in Ivory Coast. Looking at these conversations, do you think that the government of Ivory Coast is practically doing the right thing to safeguard the people? Because these protests is becoming rowdy, and of course lives have been lost according to reports that we have presently.
the form of government we want is democracy. There is so much power that given to the people. These things happen when the incumbent is afraid of his rival. And moreover, you want to manipulate the systems to get to maintain your way, your wealth, and your power. As a result, you will tend to intimidate people. Incapable of that, citizen will rally against you. So it's the government fearing the citizen intends not to come out. But trust me, this will continue and citizens will continue to air their opinion.
right.
Now we have social media. A lot of young people on social media giving their opinion as to what needs to be done. But the honest truth is this is not a good practice for democracy, especially in Africa, wherein our politicians, after they are stayed a certain number of time in power, we're going to re-election, they are contesting, they use the state resources to intimidate a rival and a colleague. I think this is totally wrong and acceptable.
All right, then. Let me take this conversation to Uganda, where Barrister is still standing by. Barrister Edward, before you chime in on the Ivory Coast situation, another analyst on this table as well, maybe not today really, did say that the likes of Bobby Wine has his popularity in the city with the young people, but in the rural area where the people, the older people who, of course, cast their vote on a regular, he doesn't seem to be popular. First, do you think this narrative might be a determinant factor going into next year's election in your country? Plus, is there a possibility that President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni is also a bit jittery about the presence and, of course, the crowd being pulled by opposition Bobby Wine? Before we go to the other part of protest in Ivory Coast.
Thank you, David. The narrative is wrong because in Uganda we have those organizations which do what we call which analyze the voters, and the analysis are actually out and they are in an open space. If you want to prove that, is that if Museveni was not worried about the elections, then he would not be detaining the opposition. He would not be actually struggling with the army to help him in campaigns. Because as we talk, it's not about a candidate being in the city. It's about what people have felt about your leadership. Okay. So people, the way you have intimidated the citizens. So nobody feels actually even good to come out and say, this is my candidate. Right. Because once you come out and say, this is my candidate, I come from Eastern Uganda, that is very far away from the capital. Okay. But in my county, I tell you, you get that even the so-called the candidate of the president who stood on the primaries elections was removed away because people are tired. And this was the minister of this regime. Right. So that alone can show you it is not about a candidate coming from the city, not about the supporters in the city. Okay. Ugandans are just tired of the regime which has actually not given us what we call democracy in the country. We have no freedom. Uganda is totally in a lock. It's actually as being a unlocked country. That's how we are. We don't have any freedom.
Okay, now on the part of protest in Ivory Coast, the elections is in a few days from now. Several key figures have been taken away from, of course, the Constitutional Council, and one of these key figures is former President Laurent Gbagbo, Charles Blair Good, Guillaume Soro, and of course Tidjane Thiam, the ex Credit Suisse of CEO. Looking at these names that have been struck out of the election this October, is this a landslide victory for the sitting president, or are we expecting something else? Because the protest is very, very loud in Ivory Coast, and the government is putting a total clampdown on protests in Ivory Coast.
Africa is yearning to change. Africa in large is actually sick. Not only countries where you see these happenings But in general, Africa is actually looking for change
All
from
right,
the so-called the key and the ones who have acquired wealth and they're no longer thinking about Africa. We as Africans are saying there must be a respect to democracy, there must be respect to the constitution,
All right,
there must be a respect to human rights, and that is a song for all the Africans, not only looking at a few countries. We all need to say, let's respect human rights, let's respect democracy, let's respect constitutions, so that now we can have Africa we need, all of us.
All right, then let's take this conversation to Nairobi, Kenya, where again, that from some perspective of some Africans is the hub for major protests across Africa. Mr. Martins, interestingly, the authorities have said that, look, the protest ban is needed to keep order and curb false information. Now, the reason for the ban on protests across the country in Ivory Coast is what I just reeled out to you. But some quarters have said, and of course some critics have said, this undermines democracy, with of course memories of past post-election violence still fresh in the mind of Ivorians. You are in Kenya, and of course your president some time ago did give us a mandate to security operatives to shoot at the leg any protester who goes destroying properties and businesses in the country. Is this particular decision from the government in Ivory Coast another way truly to curb order and of course the stop of false information in Ivory Coast? Or do you think otherwise?
Thank you, Mr. David. Before I submit, I want to acknowledge the voice of the people. Because of this platform, I know it might not be tomorrow or next year, but sooner we are going to unite Africa. I think, from my understanding, is like Africa after colonization, we entered into what we call post-colonization, whereby our people are the same people that are taking the policies of our colonizer and impose them to us. And that's why we can see democracy has been fought tooth and nail not to exist in our continent, Africa. Then what we should do, I will give credit to our leader that one before us in our country, Kenya. They fought for the current constitution, not the constitution during after colonization. Because when country reviews their constitution and find that people, the sovereignty of people is respected in a country, this kind of inhumanity we can see should not exist. Like now, banning protest, and these are the people that you are waiting them to come to vote for you. Right. It means that you have earned democracy not to up its way. It means that that process dictatorship kind of regime where people voice has been suppressed, and when you suppress the people, it means the country economy politics cannot evolve. So we need a country where the voice of the people is respected, the will of the people is respected, taxpayer money is respected, and this is how democracy and the sanity and the sanctity of democracy should take it to work. So seeing these people banning protest,
yes,
it means that they are suppressing the will of the people. When we see a president standing and saying people to be sued on the leg, and these are people you're expecting to elect them, it is shows that we have put our constitution into the prison, and even the will of the people into a place where they cannot see the right. So we need Africa that is working for us. Africa, we are rich politically. Even in matters of technology, we have advanced. You see people like Elon Musk. You see people from our country who discovered M-Pesa. So Africa, if they put their policy together, we're gonna be a continent that is superpower in the 5-6 continents we have in the entire globe.
All right, then. Thank you so very much, Mr. Martins, for that submission. Finally, let me just bring it back to the studio here. Well, Doctor, I have too many questions to ask you, but I'm going to just take it in bits. First off, the person of Alassane Ouattara, the president of Ivory Coast, presently, like I said earlier, has placed a ban on protests in Ivory Coast. Of course, his reason is because to curb order and misinformation. But in Morocco, there is a protest that went on some few days ago. The lives of young persons have also been lost. And right now, the presidency in Morocco is saying, right now, we are having to dialogue with these young people. I want to ask you on your part, a bold move or a good step in the right direction? If that is yes, why do you think it's coming this late? That's on one part. Secondly, there is also the part of the third term presidency from the Central African Republic president. I'm talking about Todera, who is aiming for his third term in office. How can Africans truly not abuse power? Because I keep going to your book again and again when I want to talk about these things. But how can Africans get it right with these kind of leadership that we found all across Africa?
Well, for me, Africa is changing. Africa is changing. All this noise everywhere it's a sign of rejecting the old tradition.
Okay.
Understand?
Okay.
What is up? And many African presidents are not good students of history. Because what is happening in Côte d'Ivoire is what happened in Senegal. Mind you, the current Senegalese president came out of prison.
True.
So, and when a president begins to ban candidates, it means he is jittery. He wants to manipulate the electoral processes for his own favor. Okay. Understand? So so if you've done well, because power belongs to the people. If you've done well, you don't need to ban anybody. It should be an open field. Come out, present your manifestos, let people buy in. Then election is an appraisal of your stewardship in office. If you feel that you have done well, the people will tell you, go back and continue from where you stop. So there's no need of this banning
candidates.
It shows that you are afraid. Then for what's happening in Uganda, we are now or the world now have a more youth population.
Okay.
So whoever is running as a candidate of the youth in any country will win. Nigeria, 65% of our population are youth under the age of 35.
Sorry to butt in here, Doctor. Using this figure of having to have the largest youth population all across the world, why do you think leadership in Africa is not being translated in that same demographic?
One, because election costs a lot of money, and it is the older generation that have this money. But the youth now make the decision. Understand? You cannot expect a youth under the age of 35 that to have the resources to run for presidential election. Right. And we don't do crowdfunding in Africa. So the money is still with the old generation, but the population is with the youths. Understand?
And that makes it a bit difficult.
That makes it a very big difficult. But whoever is running as a candidate of the youth will win. That's why I feel that in Uganda, if the election is free and fair, Bobby Wine has every chances of winning.
All right. Now, before I let you go, I'm going to throw this question all across. The economy of Africa, and using Nigeria, your country, and my country as a case study. If the youth, like you mentioned, and of course using the demograph here, gets into power, is there the possibility that there would be some transformative change from the old era that would translate to Africa becoming a major hub when it comes to economic development across the world? Because the older generation has said there are no youthful leadership that can translate this Africa to the El Dorado that we desire.
Well, to to succeed in today's world, both in leadership and in business, you need three things. Energy, which Museveni don't have. Speed, which Museveni don't have. And then integrity. Understand?
Okay.
So if you have a youth who are African conscious, if you see what is happening in Niger, in Burkina Faso, and in Mali as we speak,
right?
Understand? These people are trying to bring back the Africa for a time by rejecting the French colonists that have that keep on making them poorer and poorer on a daily basis, as UK is doing to Anglophone countries. So once we say no to imperial, no to IMF, no to World Bank, we will succeed.
All right then. Well, this is where we have to draw anchor on the analysis segment. I've been told by my producers at this point that we need to go at this point. But Barrister Edward, in maybe one sentence, can Africa get it right when young people are in power? Because it has been said that the young people are not gunning for leadership just like the older ones are doing presently. In maybe one sentence.
We need fresh minds. True, when young people take over, Africa will be more and more better than what you think 15 years ago, what you have seen so far. So young people will do better.
All right then, let me take it to Kenya, where Mr. Martins is also standing by. Same question: do you think younger minds, younger generations, if they get into power, we would have the Africa of our dreams? From your perspective, what's your position? Maybe one sentence.
Thank you so much. The current generation need a change, and it is the change that will bring sanity and sanctity in our global, in our continent arena. So I'm advocating change, young people to stand for power and to stand for change.
All right, then, thank you so very much. Now, let me take it to the young person amongst this conversation. Mr. Hansen, again, as a young person, I want to find out from you, because it has been said that young people don't even get into politics. They just talk on social media. Do you think if they have that space and chance, they might change Africa to the El Dorado that we all desire and we clamor for? And maybe in one sentence.
So the thing is, young people are willing to get involved, and for a typical example, you see young people are now ministers. They are ministers. They are commissioners in different sectors. That shows that young people are willing and prepared. Because back then they said we were not prepared to lead even institutions, but now young people are venturing. So what we continue to do is to empower yourself, build the necessary connections, get around people who have the technical expertise and knowledge, and get with the right individual that make you to serve a better country. So yes, young people are willing and we are leading. Thank you so much for today's show.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Hansen Blayon, media and communication consultant. I want to say thank you for lending your voice on the show. Also, a big thank you to Mr. Martin Siririnjue. Mr. Martin is a financial advisor, political and public affairs analyst, and of course, the CEO of Whitegate Insurance Agency in Kenya. Thank you so very much, Mr. Martins, for lending your voice on today's news. Also joined us virtually as well, all the way from Uganda, Barrister Edward Okwara Matakinya. Barrister is a business associate and, of course, a human rights activist. Barrister, thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you, and have a good afternoon.
You too,
my friend.
All right, so thank you so very much, Dr. Peter Anosike, for always lending your voice. And again, like I say, I always would hope that Africa would get it right. And of course, get his book, Abuse of Power. You don't want to, I mean,